Hello, I'm Frederick, and in this video of CodeSpace we're going to make a little CMS or a little viewer of data. What that means is that we have a list of books here, and then the idea is that we can go over these books, see the thumbnails, select by category, things like that, and then maybe add a link. So in this case it goes to the Wikipedia page of that. The interesting part about this is that we're going to write this in a programming language or system called Svelte, which allows us to separate the data from the actual content that we're going to do. And we're going to go through this step by step. So the first thing you have to do, especially if you're on Mac, is to install this tool called Homebrew. To do that, what you're going to do is go to brew.sh, copy this line, then here go to terminal in Spotlight. So in this little Spotlight icon, you search for terminal and you paste in that piece of code. It's going to ask for your password, so you type it in, and then it's going to do this installation. I already have this, so I'm not going to do that again. Once that tool is installed, and it will also install Xcode, you'll see, so it will take a while. The next thing that you're going to do is you have this tool now called Homebrew, and what you're going to do is type brew, install, and then type node, and that will install Node.js. These instructions are specific for Mac, and again, this will show a bunch of output, but we can just, mainly it's going to say nothing. It will just show you the prompt at the end, and then you're done. Don't forget to press enter at the end of the command. If you're on Windows, you have to do it a bit differently. So the thing that you want to install is Node.js, which is this tool. And here you can download the version for Windows or for Mac, the latest version, but we do it through Homebrew because it's a bit easier, I think. Okay, so once that's installed, what can we do with it? Well, the idea is that we're going to make a folder, and in that folder we're going to put our project here. So to get into a folder from the terminal, there's only actually two things you have to know. First is which folder am I in right now, and you can find that by typing pwd and typing enter. So that says users FDB, that's my home folder. If I want to go to the desktop, I type cd for change directory, space, and then desktop. Note the uppercase here. Now if I type pwd, you see that I'm in this folder, and if I type ls, you see all the random files I have on my desktop here. What I want to do here, I'll clear this out. What I want to do here is use npm to create a little basic folder, a scaffold, a starting folder on this desktop that I can use. And I'm going to do this by typing npm create and then type vite add latest. And once I type that, it's going to, probably in your case, it's going to ask to install, so you type yes, and then we give it a project name. So let's call this book base, so like a book database. We can select a framework, and here it's very important that we select Svelte, so we use the key down, select Svelte, JavaScript. Okay, cool. And now we have this folder on our desktop that we can look at it. And let's go look at that folder. So I'm going to desktop, book base, and as you can see here, we have the files already set up for us. This is the part where we want to use Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go to VS Code. This is an old version of the site. I'm going to File, Open, Desktop, Book Base, and then choose Open here. On Windows, you probably want to use Open Folder because we want to open the entire folder. Yes, we trust the authors. And now we can look at all the files that are in here. Now, because this is a database, there's a couple of things that we already need from the beginning. And these files I will prepare and make sure that they're available for you. One of them is that we want all the covers of the books, so all the pictures that I made, and those will be in the public folder. So we're going to copy this over to the public folder. And the other one is a description of the file itself, and that's in source. Here there's books.csv, and this lists all the books that are available. So this one we will put in the books.csv here. And if you press spacebar, you can see, so this is an ID, a title, an author, published, and then the link to Wikipedia. I put it here because I can immediately include it into Svelte, which is useful, and I'll show you how to do that. To do that, however, we have to do a bit of configuration because that doesn't come automatically. There's a little plugin that we need that we're going to install that allows us to load this CSV file in directly. And CSV is a comma separated value. It's basically what you get out of Excel. So here we can take a look at that. So in our configuration here, there's this little plugin that I have, which is rollup plugin.dsv, and that's the one we're going to install here. So in the terminal, I'm going to go here to New Terminal in VS Code, and here there's a bunch of things that I can install. So I can type npm install, and then I want to use that plugin that I just saw, which is rollup/plugin-dsv. That's going to install the plugin, and that plugin will allow us to use CSV files in our software itself. So that's very useful. And then also for good measure, we're just going to type npm install as well, and that's going to install the rest of the packages. Now, normally this is not needed, but it's useful to do it anyway. And then we can actually type npm run dev, and that's going to start a little development server on our computer here. You see it has the link here. If we hover over it and we hold command, we can actually go to this link and we will see the basic setup of this site. Cool. All right, so next step is to go to this, to use this plugin. So we're going to type import dsv from rollup plugin dsv, like this. I'm also going to turn this off for now. And then here in the plugins, I'm going to type dsv, so it becomes part of this plugins as well, and it can load this CSV file. Okay, so what's the idea? Well, if we go look here at app.svelte, we basically see a basic Svelte page here. And if you don't see any colors, make sure that in the extensions here, that you actually have the extension for Svelte installed, which is, I think, just called Svelte. Yeah. This one, I think, Svelte for VS Code. And that will nicely syntax color all the pages so they look better. What you can see here is that it's going to import, there's this little script tag here, there's the main tag, and then there's style here. It basically looks like a standard HTML page, and it sort of is, although there's a couple of extra things that it does. One thing, it's reactive, which means that if we change something here, and we can see that in this counter example, which is this little count here. So if we click it, we see that it updates. And here you can see it says count is, and then with these brackets here, count. And then whenever we click it, it calls this increment method, and that's going to add 1 to the count. And automatically it will re-render this page. This is sort of the idea of Svelte, that it's going to do that automatically. And other frameworks like Vue or React basically use the same principle as well. So we're going to use that principle here. We're going to make a new file here called our book table.svelte, and that's going to be our table of all the books that we see. And for now, we can just write here, here comes the, or just type it here, books. And let's include this into our app.svelte. So we're going to app.svelte and basically clean out almost everything. Clean out the main until here. Remove all our styles because they refer to elements that we don't have anymore. And then here we're going to type import book table from booktable.svelte. And then in main we can type book table like this. Note that this has uppercase because that's how Svelte knows that this is a custom component. Going back to our app, we see that we just have books. This is set in the middle because there's next to this style here, there's also the app.css style. And as you can see here, it says body display flex. Place item centers. We don't actually want this, so we're going to say justify content flex start to put everything at the beginning of our page. Okay, cool. What do we need? Well, we need a script here to load our books here. So we can type import books from, and then remember we have this books.csv. So I think we can include it like this. Or not. Let's see what we do in the old version. And this is interesting because there's multiple ways to do it. We could actually fetch this file from somewhere else. In this case, we want the file to be directly available to us in the project itself. So we are going to do it this way. And I'm going to look at the old implementation that I have, which is exactly the same. And this is what we want to do. Okay, let me stop here and let's figure out together why this isn't working. So we have our svelte.config, which is set to Vite. Maybe we can try restarting it. So we press Ctrl-C here, or we can press this little garbage bin here and then open a new terminal and then type npm run dev again. because that should load our books file. Let's see if it still crashes. Okay, interesting. Let's see if we can type books. Cool. So it works, but the syntax highlighting here gives a problem, but it actually works. So if I type books with these brackets here, what I see is object, 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 object. And that's because the books themselves are now basically a list of objects. Let's take a look at that. Let's go to console log books. And then here we open the inspector tools, go to console, and we see that we get this array of all the books here. Cool. And this is basically what we are turning into a table. So we can say table, and then we have a, oh, it's still auto-completing, yeah. So we have a table row with all the headers. So that would be the title of the book. I'm just going to type this manually because it's a bit more fun. Yeah, the author. We have when it's published, and then we have the genre. And then the title we're also going to make into a link. And then indeed what we want to do is we want to use these special characters, which is this hashtag each, inside of these brackets, basically indicating to Svelte that we want a list of all the books. So we list all books and we get them as one book. So now within this block, we get a little block saying, okay, this is the, yeah, we have to close it like this. We have one book and we can do something with that. And as you can see, it auto-completes. It says we want to make a table row with the book title, author, when it's published, and the genres. Let's see if that works. Cool, and there we have it. So we still have our books here at the bottom, which we don't want. But then here's our main list of books, and that looks perfect. Okay, we want to style it a little bit though, so we're going to add a little style thing. And what's special here about Svelte is that if we try to style it, then this style only applies to this table. So these styles are local. That means they don't go in another component and infect that. They just are for this component. So the basic styling that we want is basically set here. We want border collapse, and then we want a border bottom, something like this. And maybe we want the font size to be a bit smaller as well. Cool. And I also don't want everything to be aligned that way. So here I'm going to say text align is left. And they're all aligned left. Cool. And then the next thing that I wanted to do is add a link here. So for the first book title, what I'm going to do is just add a link here, going to book, and I think I called that book.link, but let's see, we can actually verify that. Yeah, it's called link. So here we type book.link. Link it like this, and then put the title of the book within link. And now you see this becomes blue because that becomes the link of our book. Cool. All right, the next step that we want to do is then if we hover over one of these, we actually see a thumbnail of that. So let's make the thumbnail first and just make it static so you can actually see what's going on. I want the two side by side, so I know I'm going to need a div here, and I'm going to want to call this like side by side. That's going to close here, and then the other side, so we have the table on one side, and then the other side is going to be our yeah, let's call it book details, like we said here. And then we have this active book. We'll just hide that for now, because of course we don't always have a book. So, but this will have like let's say now books 0. So the first book dot title, and we can actually take a look at that. So that's going to appear here. Now they're not side by side because this side by side tag that I made here, it doesn't actually exist. It doesn't actually do anything. Also note that these tags have a different name here. Like side by side is here, but has this different Svelte tag. That's because the styling that we do on this is actually based on these random names that are generated, so they don't interfere with the rest. But this is the one that we want to change. So we can say side by side. And what do we have to do? We want to display flex. We want to have a little gap in between. And also, if we don't have enough room, we can actually wrap it. So this will be side by side unless it's too small, and then it goes like this. Maybe we can remove the genre for now. So remove it here and remove it here. So the table is a bit smaller. Okay, what do we do with the image? Well, the image is actually not in here, but the image is based on this ID. So what we can do is we can say the image, let's put it here. source equals the, well, first off, there's this folder called covers inside of the public folder. We don't really have to refer to public. We can just write /covers. And then we can say, well, this specific book that we have, show the ID with the JPEG. So again, we write the tags here, and you see it's already written for us, id.jpg. If you don't have Copilot, which is the extension that generates this code for me, I highly recommend it because, as you can see, it's very useful. Books0 dot. And then we close that down like this. So now we should see the first cover, unless we miswrote it like this. Now we see this first cover of the book. Cool. We can also say, well, the book details thing here, maybe it should be a bit lower, so the margin top is like maybe 5 rems. So it's a bit more down than the rest. But none of the hovering works because this just takes the first book. So the concept is a bit different. What we want to do is introduce the concept of an active book. So let's make a variable here called active book, and by default it's set to nothing. And or let's set it to books0 for now. And then here, whatever we say books0, we can actually take this and change this to active book. So this will be the same code, and now if book is 1, that will change to this first one as if we highlighted this book. And that's what we're going to do. So whenever we go over this row here, whenever we select one element of this row, which is this row, then we want to set the active book. So here we're going to say tr, and then there's a special event here called on mouse enter. So if we enter this row, if we go with our mouse in this row, we're going to call this function saying set active book, which we don't have yet. And then we're going to give it that book. Okay, cool. So let's make that function here. Set active book gets a book, and it's going to just say active book equals book. And just with that, it's actually working. We highlight these books. There's one issue, or well, you could call it an issue, is that if we leave a row, it still leaves this book active. So if we go here, it's still, this book is still here. So maybe we should also do an on mouse leave, which we can add here. And what should our active book be here? Well, nothing basically, because there's no active book anymore. So let's set this to null, which basically means nothing. So when we enter the mouse, the active book is going to be the book. If we leave, the active book is going to be null. And now if we leave our mouse, it should work. Although, as you can see here, we still have a problem. Let's see if we can figure out what that problem is. Oh yeah, cool. This is a check that we should do here because we are doing something with the active book. In this case, we're actually sort of assuming that the active book is already there because we're looking for the ID, the title, and so forth. But there's nothing here. In this case, when the active book is null, none of these things exist. So here we should do a conditional check. We basically should say, well, only if there is an active book, then you can do all of these things. And then we can close with /if, we can close that. So this only happens when we have an active book. If we now go out, you see we don't have an active book anymore. You see it sort of jumps all over the place, and that's because the CSS is trying to make the size of the table and the size of this column, this details column, the same size, which we don't want. So here in our side-by-side, which we have here, we can say that the align items actually go to flex start. Basically, otherwise it sort of tries to stretch the table until it's the right size. So now we don't have that anymore, and they're both like this, which is fine. That also means that our margin top here can change, so it's a bit less high. Cool. All right, it still jumps around a little bit. It has to do with the size of the with the book, but we're going to leave it like this. We can actually fix this by, can we? Yeah. We can actually fix this by making sure that our parent container, which is where this main class, this is the one that actually jumps around, by setting that to a fixed size. So if we go back to our app.css, here it's actually saying our main. I'm not sure if that has a style actually. Or our app, yeah, this is the one. Hashtag, yeah, this one. If we just remove the styles here, we don't have that issue anymore. Now we don't want a little bit of padding though. Yeah, that looks better. So nothing jumps around anymore. And then finally what we want to do, and this is a bit more complicated, is we want to make sure that in our book table we can actually filter on these books. So we have an active filter saying which genre that we want to filter. If we look at the book list, again, we see that we have all these genres here separated by semicolons. So we can actually take these, filter on them and check if this, this element that we have here, if this is actually in the list or not. So if we select classic fiction, we can check for each genre if classic fiction is in that list or not. So let's make a filter and let's already set it active. We did the same thing here. Now we can remove it, but we can say let active genre. And let's already think of a genre that we want to do. So let's say mystery, for example. That's our genre. We have to put in big quotes, it's a string. Now, how do we do this? Well, we can't actually show all the books anymore. Instead, what we have to do is make a selection of the books, filter the books based on whether they include this active genre or not. So we're going to make a new variable here. Yeah, let's call it filtered books. And what that's going to do is it's going to go over all the books, but then filter based on whether they are part of this active genre or not. So we're going to say books. Well, first off, if we don't have an active genre, what do we do? So we're first going to make them all equal to active books. Now we can say if we have an active genre, so if the genre is active, then we can actually say filter books, filter. And filter is a function that takes in a book and wants an answer. Basically wants to say, does this book, is this book ready or not? If it should be in the list, then we return true. If it shouldn't be in the list, it returns false. So we say book, and then here we can say book.genres includes active genre. So is this active genre one of the genres that's listed for this specific book? And then here what we can do is instead of saying for each of these books, we can say for each of the filtered books. And now what we should see is that these are all mystery books. Let's do another genre so you can see. Select classic fiction. Does this actually work? Let's try it with something that's not in the list. Let's see if that works. No. Why? Ah, okay. We have to do it something else here. We have to say filtered books equals books dot. Otherwise, we'd filter the list, but we just throw it away immediately. Okay, cool. So now we don't have any books anymore, but if we select mystery, for example, we have one book. And that's our active genre book. Cool. So we want our list of genres, of course, to appear in this list. So we do that above the table. We're going to have, well, actually above this one, we're going to have a list of all of these as buttons. But which genres do we have? Well, we can actually list them out by hand. Or what we can do is do it the smart way, and this is a bit more JavaScripty way, where we just look at all of the genres and figure it out that way. So let's try that. Let's say genres equals a new set. What's a set? In JavaScript, a set is basically like a list, but it can only include items that are that can only occur once. So if we have mystery twice, for example, it will only give us this once. So that's very useful for us because we want each genre to only appear once. So, and then we can say for const book of books. So we go through all of the books, and for each book, we're going to go to the genres. So here we're going to say, let's call this all genres because that's basically what. Let's figure out the genres of one book. And remember, this can have multiple ones. So we have to split this one. So this contains, if you remember, this contains these semicolons here. So we split this list on semicolons. And after each semicolon, there's actually a space. But we don't really want that. Instead, what we're going to do is say like this. And then do that again. We say genres.map. So for each genre, we're going to trim this. So say genre.trim. That removes the spaces at the beginning and the end. Cool. So now we have a list of genres for this specific book. And now what we can do is each of these genres, so we can say genres for each. This is like a short version of the loop. Again, we get the genre, and then for these all genres, so this set, we're going to add the genre into it. And then we have our list of all genres, and then here we can make this, because this is a set, it doesn't really work that well. Instead, we can ask it to make it into an array, basically a list, a unique list. So that works well. And yeah, it's complaining here. Do we want to fix that? Yeah, maybe. So we'll call this all genres set, and then this we can just call all like this, and now it will stop complaining. Okay, what do we do with it? Well, here for our books, we're basically going to make buttons for this. So again, we do div class genres equals genres, and note that it's completing this code because I've already written it and it's open, so it knows what I'm trying to do. But I really want to do this by hand. First of all, we're going to say, well, for each of the genres, so each of the all genres as genre, I'm going to want to make a button. And then if we click this button, I'm going to want to set the active genre. So set active genre to the genre that I have. And the button name itself should just be genre, like this. And then we close the button. And then we close each, and then we close the div, and then that should be it. It's complaining here because it doesn't know what active genre is, but at least we have our buttons here. So let's make this function here, set active genre. And that gets a genre, and just like before, we just are going to assign that here. So now it should be, if we click these, we could actually see something, but nothing's happening. Not sure why though, because this all looks perfect. Maybe, yeah, maybe we don't want this now. It should still work though, so let's log here what it's actually seeing. Yeah, so we see that if we click a button, we actually see this update, so that's good. But our list of filtered books isn't actually modified that way, which is weird. Is this a Svelting? Yeah. Maybe it is. Let's cheat a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, this is a reactive thing. So what we want to do here is basically tell Svelte, because it needs to know that it's updating. We basically have to tell Svelte that this is something special going on, that if the active genre is changing, it should actually do something with it. And the way that we can do this is with the $sign, and then after that we can type some code. So here what we can say is, well, if you find an active genre, then I want you to do this code basically, which is what we had before. Else, if there's no active genre, then it's just all the books. So basically this code can, I think, go away. And now if we click it, it works. So this is normally, well, there's a lot of cases where you don't have to do this, but here in this case with Svelte, you actually have to say, well, use this $sign because this is going to be reacting on something that we do. Okay, let's style it a little bit here. So we have genres, and then we know that we have buttons inside, so we can style it this way. We can say genres is a display flex with a grid like this, but it also should wrap. Okay. And then let's not do a gap. Not so big. Yeah. The other thing that I want to do as well, that's better. The other thing that I want to do is add a button that's basically all genres. So I can just copy this button here and then say this one is all. And then the active genre here is set to null. So if we click this, it just shows everything, and now we can select, and of course the other parts still work. Okay, we're done with our site. The next step that we want to do, or the only step that we want to do, is make sure to see how we can actually publish this, how do we put it online. And Yeah, I'll show you how you can do that here. So here in this site, there's like a publish to GitHub folder, which we can click. And then we can choose where we want to publish it. I'm not sure if we can change the name here, yeah. So I'm going to publish this to a public repository. I'll put the link in the description here. And that's going to take all the code and make sure that that's available and put online. I can look at it here. So that's my code, cool. And then I'm going to go to Netlify, log in and make a new site there. So if you don't have an account, you can make one. But it's easy to deploy your site that way. So I'm going to do add new site, import, choose GitHub, authorize it if you haven't already, and then choose Bookbase here as a thing that I want to select. It's not wanting Meet for some reason. This one. And then here it already figured out parts of this. So it says you want to deploy the main branch, that's good. You want to run npm run build, because we want actually not the source code, but the build version of the site. But the publish directory is wrong. This should be dist. And now if we deploy site, it will actually install Svelte on the server side, make sure that everything's available, give it its own domain. In this case, it's this weird domain, but if you go to domain settings and options, you can change the name here. So I can call it like Codespace Bookbase. And then if you look at the deploy tab, you can see that it's already published now. So if we go here, we actually see our book site, the one that we made, and it's all available here, and all of the buttons work. So that's just a very, very quick way to show you how you can do a basic Svelte thing with your own dataset and publish it online.